Our topic today, dear viewers, is the daily biological rhythms. This is a continuation of the previous topic that Valerie and I started in the last transmission. If you remember, and who look, by the way, we considered the annual cycle, which calculate for absolutely anyone, and it is very important to use it. And today we will look at how it is necessary to live according to what circadian rhythms in order to have just a good life, rich, healthy, and happy. Valor, I give you the floor, and at the same time the rights.
Thank you, thank you. Now then, I'll take a look. Yes, I have. No, he doesn't give me the right. Does not give.
I already have.
Now. Okay, great. Great, that's it. Then I'm by. Let's talk now. I'll do an introductory one, although you've already done it. It's brilliant, I must admit. But I also want to support the idea that our life, it is certainly multidimensional in every sense. And this is not only a material life, it is a spiritual life. This is what we devote ourselves to, living in our dimension, our tasks, our families, but at the same time. We are few, however, who are aware of, participating in some very important process, related to the evolution of the Creator Himself. Both in ancient Egyptian texts and in my books, I try to convey this idea. The idea that God, the Creator, observes this world through the eyes of man, and He not only observes it, He studies. He stores all those facts, all those events that happen to us, all those reactions that arise in the process of spiritual work. And we know that there is always spiritual work, that is, a strong spirit, as it were, forms a healthy body. In other words, some changes are taking place. And these changes are not accidental. They are related to those signals, so to speak in scientific terms. Commands that we receive from the Creator, commands that contribute to improving the operation of our internal biological antenna. In this way, we are now entering the Holy of Holies, the mechanism of how the Creator implements His path of evolution. But in this whole story, it is important, first of all, to understand that we are participants in this process. And the life of the one who gave it to us depends in a certain way on how we live, what we spend our life on. I mean, in this case, not only the parents, but also the Creator. In other words, we are in a zone of a special kind of responsibility. In order to interact well with Him, the Creator, we must follow certain rules. In this case, I would like to say games, although of course on the one hand, it is a game, but it is not a game. I am not a full supporter of the matrix theory, which is developing something like this here, and it is unclear who is behind all this. No, it's not really a game. This is a very serious process over the universal, over the Creator. And I am leading you in this way to the idea that improving yourself, and what we are already discussing, and will discuss today, are very important elements of self-improvement technology. When we bring our body, our life into a certain rhythm, in a certain order. When the will, so to speak, the will of the Creator comes into the world through you, and we become participants in this process. It can be fully realized if our body works clearly. Therefore, we must synchronize with all those rhythms among which we appeared, were born, I mean the rhythms of the earth. The main oscillator is the rhythm of the sun, and no matter what kind of work we do, we can be machinists who work at night, or miners who generally have a shift in the afternoon and evening, and at night. And all this in a certain way affects the biological rhythm of a person. Indeed, people think that over time this rhythm in a person changes. No, he doesn't change. In fact, this kind of non-compliance, they have a very negative impact on human health. And today's materials, in a sense, illustrate this idea. That's why now, turning to the material itself, I want to emphasize once again that it is very important. It has to do with the cyclicity section in general, let's call it that. This is one of the most important sections of Hermetic knowledge about how the world works, how man works, and how man is integrated into the structure of the universe. So now, when I tell you the most basic counterpoints, which we should pay attention to first of all, people have the opportunity to follow this path. This is a tool. As they say, if you follow, there will be a result. If you don't follow well, then it's your choice, and everything will be as you wanted. That is, everyone will get their own. So now I'm going to turn on the presentation. As I said, the topic is very important, and many years ago, people forgot that the choice of the optimal time for effective work, physical exercises or spiritual practices must be coordinated with the biological clock of the human body. The diurnal biological rhythms of a person should be in resonance with the diurnal rhythms of the earth. And this synchronization, as I have already said, with the rhythms of the earth, but in fact with the rhythms of Shambhala, plays a very important role and restores the energy exchange between nature and man, leads to slowing down the aging process, improving the state of the endocrine, nervous, and immune system of man. Here I have specially signed the name of the topic for you. This is the regime of daily activity of the human body. And we will talk about the processes that occur in the human body during a 24-hour daily cycle. This is important because the spiritual practices that some people are engaged in acquire a completely different content, about which modern man knows nothing. Therefore, and also because the world, the cosmos, opens up and begins to talk with a person. And with those people who are in resonance with the surrounding world, that is, on the same wave. Thus, I am once again pronouncing the idea of the importance of the knowledge that we are going to talk about now. The data section we are going to talk about is not long, but it is very, very important. And I ask you to pay very close attention to it. Below, we will look at the table of biorhythms of the most important processes occurring in the human body, and see the correlation with the daily rhythms of the earth according to the sun. And this correlation, these rhythms need to be followed in order to achieve an effective resonance, that is, an effective result. We'll start at 23 o'clock. It's already night. Why is this important? Because it is at 23 hours that our body goes into a completely different state. It's like he's falling asleep. And at this moment, the process of division and the most effective cell renewal in the body begins. That is, the efficiency and speed of the update is 8 times more active than at other times of the day. And taking into account the fact that even a person is young and his sleep is deep, this process turns on anyway. But I emphasize that in fact, in elderly people and in people who suffer from some diseases, this process of body renewal, rejuvenation of the body, the process of cell division, it slows down significantly.
обновление организма, омоложение организма, процесс деления клеток, он замедляется, значительно замедляется. Поэтому
Therefore, we do not
мы не
renew ourselves,
обновляемся, и
and
постепенно
gradually,
происходит с нами
what happens to us during our
изменение.
life happens.
И
Here,
вот в
under
обычных
normal unfavorable
неблагоприятных
conditions,
условиях этот
this process increases in any case,
процесс,
but only about
он
4 times the
увеличивается в любом
potential.
случае, но только где-то в 4 раза от потенциала,
The human
от
potential is
положения.
very great.
Поэтому,
Therefore, taking into account that at this moment
учитывая,
cell growth
что
hormones are
в
actively
этот
produced,
момент
I
активно
recommend, and the
вырабатываются
ancients did,
гормоны
to
роста
use a
клеток,
caduceus of the mountain of the Kant type.
я рекомендую, собственно, что и делали древние, использовать кадуцеи гора типа конт. Вот
One of the
одна из
functions, one
функций,
of the
одна из
tasks that
задач,
the ancient
которую
Egyptian priests and
реализовывали
pharaohs
древние египетские
realized,
жрецы и
those who
фараоны,
had this tool,
те, у кого
and
этот
those to whom it
инструмент
was given
был, и
with
те,
peculiar
кому он был
instructions for their
дан,
use.
со своеобразными инструкциями по их использованию.
This
Вот.
tool was
Этот
used,
инструмент
including at
использовался в
night,
том
in order
числе
to
и
activate
в
the
ночное
process of
время для того,
rejuvenation of
чтобы
the body,
активировать
activate the
процесс
production of
омоложения
growth
организма,
hormones, and this accordingly
активировать
allowed the human
выработку
body to resist all
гормонов
those negative
роста,
factors that
и
naturally
это,
pile on a person
соответственно,
during this period
позволяло
from
организму
23 hours
человека
to 4 in the morning.
противостоять всем
Because
тем
at the moment
негативным
when the
факторам,
body he
которые,
falls asleep,
естественно,
our immune
наваливаются на
system
человека
too,
в этот
its
период
effectiveness also
с 3
decreases.
часов до 4 утра, потому что в тот момент, когда организм засыпает, наша иммунная система тоже, ее эффективность тоже понижается.
And if we
И
come to this period
если
of
мы
time with a dirty body,
приходим
for
в этот
example, we ate at the wrong
период
time,
времени
but we'll talk about it later,
с
then the immune
грязным
system
организмом,
consists
например,
of
мы не
two
вовремя
components.
покушали, но мы об этом еще поговорим, то иммунная система, состоящая из двух составляющих.
One
Одна
component is the
составляющая– это
immune
иммунная
system of our
система
physical
наших
shell,
физических
our
оболочек,
body, and the other
нашего
component of
организма,
the immune
а
system.
другая
It can be
составляющая иммунной
represented as a
системы,
kind of
ее
battery
можно представить
connected to
как
the
некий
immune system of the
аккумулятор,
Earth and space.
подсоединенный к иммунной системе Земли и космоса.
There is
Между
certainly a
этими двумя
connection between these two
системами,
systems.
безусловно, существует связь.
And
И
if
если
this
этот
channel
канал
works
работает
effectively,
эффективно, то
then our
наша
immune
иммунная
system is
система,
effectively pumped up.
она эффективно подкачивается. И
And
вот
so
работа
working with the
цирконий
wands of
гора
Mount
Конт
Comte allows you to feel this
позволяет
difference.
ощутить вот эту разницу,
When you
когда
usually sleep
вы
without this
спите
tool,
обычно
and you
вот
have
без этого
already
инструмента, и
formed
у вас
your
уже
own idea of
сформировалось
sleep,
свое представление о сне,
and
и вы
so try to sleep
попробуете
with the
спать
wands
с
of Mount
горами
Kent,
гора Конт,
and you
и
will
вы
feel almost immediately,
почувствуете
on the first day
практически
or on
сразу,
the second day,
на первый
that
же
your
день или
sleep
на
will be
второй
deeper,
день,
you will wake
что
up more
ваш
rested.
сон будет глубже, вы будете просыпаться более отдохнувшими.
This is
Вот
a
это и
direct
есть
and indirect
прямое и
confirmation of the
косвенное
idea that there is a
подтверждение
certain
мысли о
channel
том,
for pumping energy
что
from the
существует
reservoir of
некий
the immune
канал
energies of the
перекачки
cosmos in the
энергии, то
human
есть
body,
иммунный,
which
скажем
naturally,
так,
over
из
the years,
резервуара
as it
иммунных
becomes
энергий
slagged,
космоса в
it
организме
begins to
человека,
work less
который,
efficiently, and everything happens
естественными
to us that
годами,
we have been used to
по мере
for millennia.
закономерности, он
In fact, millions of years in our
работает не так
evolution, we
эффективно,
see that we
и
are
вдруг с
getting
нами
old at the
происходит
wrong
вот то, к
time.
чему мы
We start to
привыкли
get
за
sick
уже
unexpectedly for
тысячелетия, на
ourselves,
самом деле
and
миллионы
all
лет
this
нашей
bunch of
эволюции, мы
problems that
видим,
are
что
primarily
мы
related
не
to the lack
вовремя
of
стареем,
energy.
мы начинаем
This very
болеть,
energy
и
that we
вот эти,
receive,
вся вот
we
эта
pump
куча
it from
проблем,
space into
которая
ourselves,
связана
and
в
first
первую
this
очередь с
energy.
отсутствием
It
энергии,
allows
вот
our
этой
body to
самой
work
энергии,
effectively
которую мы
then, through the body, through
получаем
our
при
state. These energies
перекачивании
affect the
из
environment,
космоса в
our
себя,
environment,
и
which naturally
сначала
leads
эта
to a
энергия,
change in the
она
parameters and
позволяет
quality
нашему
of our
организму
life.
эффективно работать, затем через организм, через наше состояние происходит воздействие этих энергий на окружающую среду, на наше окружение, что, естественно, ведет к изменению параметров и качества нашей жизни.
Accordingly,
Собственно,
this
вот на
factor,
этот
you need to
фактор
pay
нужно
attention.
обратить внимание.
And we
И
move on to the next
переходим к
important stage.
следующему важному этапу.
It's
Это
4 o'clock in the morning.
4 часа утра.
That's
Вот
when
в
it
этот
happens,
момент
as it were.
происходит как бы Подожди, значит, а я Сейчас,
Now, wait
секундочку,
a
я не
minute.
договорил то, что
I said
происходит
what happens in 23 hours.
а, в 23 часа. Сейчас,
Now just a
секунду, вот я
second.
хотел бы
So
все-таки
I would
еще
like
раз
to show you
для
this
вас
slide
этот
again
слайд
for you
показать,
so that
чтобы
you
вы
can see
его
it for
увидели для
yourself.
себя. Вот.
That
Значит,
is, the
происходит
most efficient division
деление,
of the
наиболее
body's cells
эффективное деление
occurs,
клеток
8
организма,
times more
в 8 раз
active than at
активнее,
other
чем в
times of the
другое время
day.
суток.
At a
В
more
более
mature
зрелом
age,
возрасте, я уже
I have
упоминал,
already
процесс
mentioned,
ниже гораздо
this process
протекает, и,
proceeds much lower,
соответственно,
and,
в этот период
accordingly,
я
during this period,
рекомендую
I
работать с
recommend working
газами
with the wands of
флора
Horus of
и
the Kant
фотона.
type. Here I
Вот,
show
и
them
покажу
just
на
in
всякий
case
случай
again.
еще раз.
Moving on,
Переходим дальше.
4 o'clock in
4
the
часа
morning.
утра.
This is the moment when the
Это
process of activating the body begins.
момент, когда начинается процесс активизации организма. И не
And it is not
случайно
by chance that in
в
different
разных
traditions, at 4
традициях
o'clock in the
в
morning
4
is
часа
the time
утра
when, for
это
example,
время,
the same
когда, например,
monks,
те же самые
Buddhist monks, they
монахи,
prefer to wake
буддисты,
up,
они
they
не
begin
начинают
meditative
просыпаться, они
work.
начинают медитативную работу.
This is a
Это
very
очень
specific time in the life
специфическое
of the diurnal
время
planet Earth,
в
because it is
процессе
also a
жизни
living organism.
суточного процесса планеты Земля, потому что планета Земля, мы говорим, тоже живой организм.
There is
Есть сознание,
consciousнess
есть
and
физическое
physical
тело и
body,
очень
and
многие
very many
процессы,
of the
с
processes that
которыми мы
we are synchronized.
синхронизируемся.
And I'm
И
nervous
я
to do it
желаю
with the
тогда
help sync your
использовать
body's circadian rhythms
регуляции
and with the
своего
tools of the
организма по собственному
caduceus in the
ритму с помощью
mountain. So
инструментов,
we
чтобы
associate
тело
our
было.
body according to the
И таким
principle of
образом мы
anthropophobia,
связываем наш
and our
организм по
body
принципу
begins to interact more
антропоподобия,
deeply with the body of
и
the earth.
наш
With the
организм,
grid of the earth,
начиная более
we
глубоко
definitely learn
взаимодействовать
from this huge
с
amount of
организмом
good for
Земли, с
themselves and the
энергосистемой
world
Земли,
around us.
мы, безусловно, извлекаем из этого огромное количество пользы для себя и для окружающего нас мира. Поэтому
Therefore, at 4
4
o'clock in
часа
the morning,
утра
the
это вот
activation of the
начало
body begins.
активизации организма. Он
It
начинает
begins to
бороться
fight
против
against aggressive
агрессивных
molecules, free
молекул,
radicals,
свободных
that
радикалов,
contribute to the aging of the body.
способствующих старению организма. Поэтому
Therefore, even with this little stroke, I
даже
want
вот
to
этим
show that if we
маленьким
take into account all these
штришком
factors, you will
хочу
feel for
показать,
yourself
что если мы
that the aging
учитываем все эти
processes in
факторы,
the body will begin to slow
вы
down effectively.
почувствуете на себе, что процессы старения в организме начнут эффективно замедляться.
Then we
Затем
move
мы
seamlessly into the
переходим
next cycle,
плавно
the next very
к
important
следующему
part of the
циклу.
energy of the
Следующий
duad.
очень
Says
важный
the ancient Egyptian
раздел
text that a grid of earth
энергии
and
дуата,
man
как
are
говорит
aura.
древнеегипетский текст. Дуат – это энергосистема Земли и человека, наша аура.
That
Вот, то
is,
есть
the fifth
пятый
section,
раздел,
the fifth
пятый
hour.
час.
At
Вот в
this
этот
moment,
момент
the adrenal glands wake
просыпаются
up, after
надпочечники,
which they
после
direct
чего они
cortisol, the
направляют
stress hormone,
кортизол,
into the
гормон
blood.
стресса в кровь.
And I
И я
think
думаю,
some
что
people
некоторые
have
люди
felt that
ощущают,
at
что в
some
какой-то
point,
момент, когда
when
вы
you wake up
просыпаетесь
at
в 5
5 in the
утра,
morning,
можно
you can feel
ощутить,
as if something
что-то
has stressed you
такое
a little bit.
стрессануло вас немножко.
But
Но
this is
это
a natural process.
естественный
It
процесс,
leads to the
он
invigoration of the
приводит
body.
к взбадриванию организма.
Wake up in the
Просыпаются
kidneys.
почки,
They will
они
intensify their
опять
work after
делают
sleep.
свою работу после сна.
It's now
И
6
6
o'clock in the
часов
morning.
утра
This is the
это
moment when the level
момент,
of
когда
cortisol in the
уровень
blood
кортизола
reaches
в
its
крови
highest level.
достигает наивысшего уровня.
The
Процесс
process of cell
обновления
division
клеток
renewal
резко
is
идет
rapidly
на
declining.
спад.
And at
И
this
вот в
moment,
этот момент
the following very important
возникают
processes are
следующие
taking
очень
place.
важные процессы.
Blood
Повышается
pressure
кровяное
rises, body
давление,
temperature rises.
повышается температура тела.
I
Я
think you
думаю, что
remember that
помните, что
sometimes when you
когда
wake
утром
up in the
просыпаешься, такое
morning,
ощущение,
it
что
feels like
в
the
доме
house is warm, but it's kind of
тепло,
cold
а
for
вам
you.
как-то холодновато.
But this
Ну,
is
это то,
something that
что
you may
вы
notice
после
if you
давнего
haven't
времени не
noticed it,
замечали,
and you will have the
и у вас
opportunity
будет
to once again
возможность
make
лишний раз
sure
убедиться,
that what we
что
are saying now
все
really
то,
takes
что мы
place.
проговариваем,
It will give you a little more
действительно имеет
confidence,
место быть.
strength on the way to
Вам
implementing
это
all this.
придаст немножко больше уверенности, силы на пути вот реализации всего
And I
этого.
sincerely
Я
wish
очень
you to
желаю,
listen
что
and
действительно
follow
пойдете
this
этим
path,
путем, и вы
and I
получите,
am sure
я
you will get a
убежден,
very good result.
очень хороший результат.
And what is
И
then
вот
important? At
затем
this
важно
moment,
в
the
этот
level of
момент
adrenaline in the blood
повышается уровень
increases.
адреналина в крови.
This is
Это
the
самое
most favorable
благоприятное
time,
время
please
обратить
note,
внимание
for
для
water
водных
procedures.
процедур.
Taking a
Принятие
shower is
душа
best,
лучше всего
cold
холодного
or
или
contrast.
контрастного.
Water
Водные
treatments,
процедуры,
they improve the
они
circulation of
улучшают
cortisol in the
циркуляцию
blood,
кортизола в
which leads
крови
to a
и
more
приводят
effective
к более
invigoration of the body.
эффективному взбадриванию
And by the way,
организма. И,
who remembers Korny Ivanov's briefcase, he also talked about the fact that this is exactly the time when you need to go out barefoot, especially in winter. Take a couple of buckets of cold water and pour yourself. But the portfolio rhizome system was not there that everything is perfectly in order. We will come back to this later. Because the system is effective, but it has some flaws in its presentation. We will have them with you to consider, and then you will get great result in my life. Then we move on to 8 o'clock in the morning. Please note, more precisely by 7 o'clock in the morning, I misspoke. This is the best time for breakfast. This is what I am constantly talking about, and I want to emphasize that this is the time when carbohydrates that have entered the body are actively decomposed, and they are easily converted into energy. At this point, you can eat whatever you want, both sweet and sour, as they say. You can eat a little meat, and even have a snack with some kind of yummy. And what is very important, this is a period when you will not cause any damage to your pancreas. It itself is in an active phase at this moment. The digestive system, the whole system, translates all of this into energy very easily. That's what is also very important, that at this moment there is no active fat deposition. Therefore, you need to eat during this period, somewhere from 7 to 8 in the morning. It is during this period that I urge you to do this, because if at this time you have taken food, even seemingly heavy, then the body has enough time and energy, which the body receives, as you may have guessed, from the outside. And this energy allows you to digest all the products taken into the body. Then the body turns on the mechanism of removing slag from the body, and when this process turns on, you and I experience or begin to experience a slight feeling of hunger. And I think that you have noticed more than once that this feeling of hunger, it turns on somewhere around 11, by 12 o'clock. And this is another such treacherous function of the body, because we will come to this later, to this period, at this moment. The active deposition of fat in the body begins, but this is not the main thing. The main thing is that this is the period when the body begins to actively remove slags. And what are we doing at this moment? We wanted something to eat. We go with you, have a snack, and turn off the process of slag removal. Accordingly, evening comes. We'll have something to eat in the evening, for an hour or so at 11 o'clock at night, and then they start all these products being undigested. All this begins to hit the body. The immune system, once again I want to say in advance, the immune system of the physical body is already asleep by 11 o'clock. There remains this very transitional moment between our internal battery and the cosmic source, and here is the connection. I mentioned and I will mention it, it already works inadequately by mature years. Therefore, it is necessary to use wands during this period night. So, when we go to bed and our stomach is full and the slags are not removed, the process that takes place at this moment in the body can be described as how you put a wrench on the accumulator. There is a powerful discharge, an explosion, which is called BAMS. We have discharged our internal battery with you, and then do not be surprised why we have a so-called immunodeficiency among other things. That is, the body does not have enough energy. Therefore, we need to remember this at 8 o'clock. We move smoothly from 7 to 8 o'clock. This is the time when the blood circulation of the body is activated. At this time, there is an active decomposition of alcohol in the blood. This nuance is a very important factor for a Russian person, so I emphasize it. And what is more important, and I think that everyone has noticed this in their lives, this is the moment. This is the time when sexual activity is activated. And I think that I will repeat once again, you know that really, somehow in the morning there is such a kind of cheerfulness, pulls on feet. This is due to the cycles that our body goes through. Here, and already at 9 o'clock, your skin is in the best shape. This is the most favorable time to use cosmetics. Girls, this is for you, though for men too, who use cosmetics. Because his immunity is completely restored after a night, and the skin perceives cosmetics and all kinds of procedures very well. At this time, from 9 in the morning to 10 in the morning, it is not recommended to conduct sports training, because the level of cortisol in the blood at this moment is at its peak, and due to the loads, protein synthesis is restrained. But there is another very interesting and very important plus. This is the most favorable time for injections, if they are prescribed to you. Because the body perceives them, the immune system passes through, filtering the negative and so on. That is, in any case, we get the best effect from any medications during this period. Let's go further with you. The next period with you is 11 hours and 12 hours. But we have already talked with you today about the fact that this is the time when the fat glands are actively working. This is an unfavorable time for eating, since the process of fat deposition is most active at this time. But during this period, the body is in its, on the one hand, the highest state, but at the same time, it has a very negative attitude to alcohol. If at this time, as some people do, they take alcohol, then there are possible problems with the pancreas. This is the time that kills the pancreas, alcohol with liver, and appear in the so-called hypernatremia motility, that is, at the start of human diarrhea. Alcohol taken at this time, it dramatically worsens the quality of the skin. For us, this is important for those who take care of themselves, as a result of which it can acquire such a bluish shade, bespeckled. Very unpleasant appearance. So get covered with allergic spots. Therefore, at this time, remember that alcohol cannot be taken, but this is the most time for sports. So I, for example, personally, when I go to the gym, I certainly go at this time. Here, now 13 hours is the moment when blood pressure and hormone levels decrease. At this time, when fatigue approaches, there comes a period of decline in activity. By the way, I must remind you that it was at this moment, as a rule, when we were in kindergartens or in pioneer camps. We were offered such a quiet hour to sleep a little. And this is absolutely correct, because all those energies that a person, well, in fact, in theory, if everything happens correctly, receives, then during this hour the energy and information that you receive, it is best absorbed by the human body, his consciousness and subconscious. Therefore, it would be, of course, cool to arrange such a quiet hour somewhere in schools or institutes during this period. But so far it is impossible. However, I think we should be aware of this. And if children are near us, and those children who are homeschooled, this factor should be taken into account. And it will play a very important and positive role in the quality of perception of information and in human health, if this fact is taken into account. Moving on. So, here are 3 hours, 15 hours. This is the time of partial or complete immunity of the body to medications. Here, pay attention to this. That is, at this time, it is not recommended to inject yourself with anything, and it is not recommended to perform operations at this time. It is better to try to avoid this period. Then you have a better chance that your health will not be subjected to severe negative effects. Because we are now talking about phases, energy phases of the human body. And these phases are associated with external cosmic influences and need to be taken into account.
Энергетических фазах организма человека. И эти фазы, они связаны с внешним космическим воздействием, и эти фазы нужно учитывать.
I must also emphasize that I am writing here that partial or complete immunity to medications depends on the disease, or on the age of a person. Therefore, I emphasize once again that taking medications at this time is not recommended. But there is an aggravation of taste sensations and an increase in appetite. But this in no way means that you can now break into the canteen and crackle something. That is, an increase in appetite and taste qualities and properties is an indirect indicator that the body is again entering the phase of removing toxins from the body. Therefore, eating is a process that we need to be deeply conscious, thoughtful, and timely. Here, but nevertheless, 16 hours is the second increase in the activity of the body. The blood is again enriched with oxygen, and the work of the heart and lungs is activated. You may even have such a rapid heartbeat and breathing. This is a favorable time for physical activity and exercise. So, once again, we will emphasize with you about physical exertion, mental exertion, and so on. This period for us is somewhere from 11 to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This is the first period, these 2 hours, when we can actively engage in sports. At this moment, I want to mention again, the process of active fat deposition is underway when we are engaged, and the body is at the peak of its energy at this moment. We accordingly translate all these substances not into fat, but into muscles. We translate into energy, so by following this rhythm, you will notice that your body and its condition will significantly improve. And this time is 16 hours. This is when your energy level increases again, and you can play sports at this moment, without compromising your energy system and other body functions that are stretched in a certain way over time. 17 hours is the period of activation of the endocrine system, especially the pancreas. And pay attention, taking into account all the factors of the sun, rhythm, and so on. This is the time when you can take some food for the last time, but I want to emphasize that it is better not to take heavy food, not meat. I remind you once again that around 7-8 in the morning is the time when you can eat from a dead lausha. And there will be nothing, no problems. You can't be a vegetarian, but your body will be in excellent condition because you are more heavy food during the day. Do not take you into account all the factors rhythm. The body removes all toxins. And as a child, I think that you have noticed, always goes to the toilet in a big way before going to bed, you will
Вы
also
тоже
start
начнете
doing
это
this.
делать. Это
This
состояние
means that you
уходит
go to sleep with a
в сон
free stomach.
со свободным желудком.
The whole
Что за
bulk of the
ним
energy that we
уходит
usually
вся
spend
основная
just
масса
during this
энергии,
period on
которую мы
digestion and on
обычно
the fight
тратим
against
как в
toxins
этот период
does not go
на
there,
переваривание
and
пищи
all this
и на
energy
борьбу
is
со
directed to
шлаками,
spiritual
то вся
improvement,
эта энергия
to improve the state
направляется
of the
вот
body, that
на
is, for
духовное
good.
совершенствование, на улучшение состояния организма, то есть на благо.
Remember
Вот об
this.
этом помните.
And once
И
again, I
еще раз
want to
хочу
say
сказать,
that on the
что
one
с одной
hand,
стороны вы в это
we can
время
take a little
можете
food
съесть
at this
немножко
time.
пищи.
It should be
Это должны
fruits,
быть фрукты,
vegetables,
овощи, желательно
preferably
не
not acidic,
кислые,
because acid
потому что
will, on the
кислота будет
contrary,
наоборот вызывать у вас
cause you to have
появление
a feeling
чувства
of appetite.
аппетита.
And I
И
want to
хочу вас
remind you once
еще раз
again,
напомнить,
please note
обратите внимание,
that
что
18 o'clock is the time
18
when, for
часов – это
example,
то время,
in those
когда,
lands where the
например,
Egyptian
те
civilization developed and
земли,
flourished,
где
in Egypt,
развивалась
and not only.
и
This is the
расцветала
time when the
египетская
sun has almost
цивилизация,
set.
в Египте и не только, это время, когда солнце уже практически зашло.
And this
И
is
вот
the
в этот
moment
момент,
before which the Egyptians
до
took food in one
которого
form
в
or
той или
another.
иной форме египтяне принимали пищу.
After
После
dark,
того, как
they stopped
наступала
eating.
темнота, они переставали принимать пищу. Более
Moreover,
того,
somewhere
раза
once or
два в
twice a
месяц
month, they were
они
engaged in
занимались
klezmorim, they cleaned
соревнованиями,
mine, and that's
чистили
why
себе
later,
кишечник.
much later,
И именно
Plato
поэтому
wrote in his writings with
впоследствии,
envy
чуть
wrote
позже,
that the
Платон
Egyptians,
писал
compared to
в
the
своих
rest of the
трудах
surrounding
и
population,
как бы
looks
зависть
criminally young.
писал, что вот египтяне по сравнению со всем остальным окружающим его населением смотрится преступно молодо.
That's
Вот
why envy
поэтому
took
зависть его
him.
брала,
But he
но
could
он
not
сам
force
заставить
himself
себя
to
не
live
мог
the way the
жить так,
Egyptians
как жили
lived,
египтяне.
so everything that
Поэтому с
happened
ним
to him
случилось
happened.
все то, что случилось.
Here,
Вот.
at this
В этот
moment,
момент
active
начинается
digestion of
активное
food and
переваривание
inactive
пищи
fat deposition
и
begins, respectively.
неактивное
I draw your
разложение.
attention once again.
Соответственно,
If by this
еще раз
time you have taken
обращаю
some
ваше
kind of
внимание,
food that is
если к
not
этому
heavy, your
времени
pancreas is
вы
active. You do not
приняли
plant your
какую-то
pancreas with
пищу
heavy food,
нетяжелую,
you do not
у
injure
вас
it.
поджелудочная железа активна, вы не засаживаете свою поджелудочную железу тяжелой пищей, вы не травмируете ее.
The food is
Пища это
actively
время
digested
активно
by this time, and there
переваривается,
is no active
и
fat
разложения
deposition.
жирового активного
Thus,
нет.
if everything is
Таким
according to the
образом, если
clock,
все по
everything is
часам,
according to
все
the
по
sun,
солнцу,
by the
к
evening,
вечеру
the body will
организм
throw out of
выведет
itself.
из себя,
It will take out
выделит то,
everything
что
that
ему
it does not
нужно.
need. Here,
Вот.
because
Потому что
there is a
происходит
complete
полное
breakdown of
расщепление
food
продуктов
without much
питания
damage,
без
as I
жировых
emphasize
добавок. Я
again,
еще
for
раз
the pancreas
подчеркиваю,
and for the
для
body.
поджелудочной железы и для организма.
You see
И
how I
еще раз
try to set you up,
постараюсь
because I
настроить,
love you all.
потому что я вас всех люблю.
Do so,
Делайте
and you will
так,
be happy.
будет вам радость. А
And the most
самое главное
important
это то,
thing is
что
that you will start to look
вы
much
начнете
better,
выглядеть
and everyone
здоровым,
around you will start to
все
envy you,
окружающие
and
вас
try to
начнут
follow your
завидовать
path.
и стараться следовать вашему пути. Таким
Thus, by
образом,
changing
изменяя
yourself,
себя,
you will
будете
change the
изменять
world for the
мир
better.
к лучшему.
And
Вот,
with
и со
all
всеми
these
этими
ideas,
идеями мы с
you
вами
and I come in
подходим
already at
уже
19 o'clock,
к 19
or rather
часов.
18
Если
hours,
вот 18
which we have
часов, то,
talked about
то, о чем мы
already at this
говорили,
moment,
уже
the
провели.
body's
Вот этот
susceptibility
момент
to pain decreases.
в организме снижается восприимчивость к болевым ощущениям.
It is
То, как
also such a
ваше
very
внимание
important
было надо
moment, it should be noted,
отметить, и
and
я
I
его
note it.
отмечаю.
And
И
after
после
that,
этого мы с
you
вами
and I are
отходим
leaving at
в
19 o'clock.
19 часов.
And this
И это
time, pay
время,
attention,
обратите
our immune
внимание,
system begins to
наша
gradually
иммунная
move to sleep.
система начинает постепенно двигаться ко сну.
That
То
is,
есть
the function
функция
of the
иммунной
immune system
системы
gradually decreases,
постепенно
so 19 hours or
понижается,
so at this time.
поэтому 19
Increases the
часов
risk of
именно в это
allergic
время
reactions, especially the
повышается
mucous
опасность
membranes.
аллергических реакций, в особенности слизистых оболочек.
And if you
И
have paid
если
attention to
вы
this, then, as a rule,
обратили на
I
это
think that
внимание,
many
то,
have
как
paid
правило,
attention,
я
they
думаю,
are
что
really
многие
are
обратили
allergic.
внимание,
Latently
они
located,
действительно
there and
испытывают
manifesting
периодические
themselves in the body of the
проценты,
sores,
находящиеся
they
там
begin to
в период
manifest themselves
долговременной
in the
порядочности,
evening.
они начинают проявлять себя именно к вечеру.
That
То есть,
is,
когда
when the
иммунная
immune
система
system begins to
начинает
prepare to
готовиться
go to
ходить
sleep,
ко сну,
this is where you begin to
вот
creep
тут и
out all
начинают
of our internal
расползаться наши
worms.
с вами внутренние червячки. Вот,
Therefore,
поэтому
you
на
need
них
to pay
нужно
attention
обратить
to them.
внимание.
Once again,
Еще раз
I will say
буду
again,
говорить,
use the
пользы
caduceus of
Circadian
Horace.
Gora, они
They deal with all these
прекрасным
problems
образом
in a beautiful way,
расправляются с
especially if
этими
these
проблемами,
problems are in their infancy.
особенно если
They
эти
do it
проблемы находятся
100%.
в зачаточном состоянии.
And here we are with you with all these blissful thoughts. We come at 20 o'clock already. This is the time of acceleration and exacerbation of all reactions. This is the last period of the day, associated with increased activity of the body. That is, look how interesting it is arranged. So, we come in at 20 o'clock. We have an increased activity of reactions and perception. And what are they giving us at this time? Program the time with all the news, and tell me after that this is done by accident. It is not by chance, but we will extract from this important functions of the mechanism of our consciousness, the subconscious of the organism, and we will tell ourselves that at this time you can read something useful or watch some movie. Because all reactions, perceptions, and, if I may say so, the reification of knowledge, it will proceed in the body, in the most effective way. Accordingly, we come with you at 9 o'clock. This is already the time when the activity of the body begins to decrease very noticeably. That is, everything began to decline and gradually, we come again here in the 23 hours. Is the low activity of the capillaries. Remember this too, and be careful. This is your vascular system. Our blood pressure is decreasing. That's why, when you go to sleep at this moment, remember that, for example, the rods of Horace or Eger's caduceus are quartz with quartz filler, which very effectively affect the vascular system, improving the rhythm of the vascular system. And I want to emphasize once again that we sincerely believe that blood pumps through the vascular system of the heart. This is an erroneous opinion. The heart gives only the direction, the vector of blood movement, and the heart sets a certain impulse. This is a weak electrical pulse, following which our vascular system is shortened, the length of which, if all the vessels with small ones are laid out in one straight line, is 100,000 kilometers. Terrible information on the one hand, because when you think that we have so many energy wires, do you think where it fits? And on the one hand you admire, and on the other hand, you begin to understand that if this is 100,000 kilometers of tube, then what kind of heart can push and push this blood? By no means. The vascular system is shrinking, and this is very important. But what I'm saying, when you start working with rods, caduceus, quartz filler at this time, you should, I advise you, turn off your consciousness. That is, you don't think about something stressful there, and tomorrow I need to do this, that, and then everything turns out great. Because if you don't do it, then there is another increase in temperature by a degree, the body, and you will go to sleep. Well, let's say so, much later, about 4 o'clock in the morning only. Therefore, following the rhythm of the body, it is necessary at this time to start using the wands of Horus of the Kant or Baya type. This is for those who are engaged in spiritual work, who need information from the depths of the universe, because we have already talked. And we will talk again. We are integrated into the structure of the universe. There is an integral, constantly operating energy informational connection between us with a certain center of the universe. And from there we can receive information, because we are involved in this process in a special way. Because we have now divided the day with you into 24 hours, and we are talking about what is happening to us at these moments. But I would like to draw your attention to another very interesting idea that can be traced back to the ancient Egyptians. They divided their life and their aura, which they called duat, into 12 main hours into 12 parts.
Но я хочу обратить ваше внимание еще на одну очень интересную идею, которая отслеживается у древних египтян. Это они делили свою жизнь и свою ауру, которую они называли дуат, на 12 основных часов, на 12 частей.
12
12
parts is
частей–
2
это два
times 12
раза
24
по
hours. That is, it
12-24
is 12
часа,
hours of
получается
activity
12 часов
and
активности и
passivity.
пассивности.
And
И
within
вот
these 12
в
hours of the
рамках
day,
этих
day and night,
12 часов
the processes that take
суток,
place in the human
дня
body
и
are a
ночи,
reflection of the processes that take
процессы,
place in the
которые
human energy
протекают в
system.
организме человека, являются отражением процессов, которые протекают в энергосистеме человека.
So,
Итак,
12 energy
12
bodies, 12
энергетических
o'clock in
тел,
the afternoon, and 12 o'clock
12
at night,
часов дня
you
и
feel a
12
certain
часов
relationship.
ночи. Чувствуете взаимосвязь определенную? Вот.
Therefore,
Поэтому
strict observance of
четкое соблюдение
these instructions,
вот
which we are
этих
talking about now, will
указаний,
allow
этих
you to adjust your
инструкций,
aura
о
in
которых
such a
мы сейчас
way that when
говорим,
activation occurs already
позволит
starting
вам
somewhere, remember, from 8
настроить
o'clock in the
свою
evening.
ауру таким образом, что когда происходит активизация уже, вот начиная где-то, помните, с 8 часов вечера,
And we
а
have
у
the
нас с
8th
вами
energy shell with you.
восьмая
This is the
энергетическая
shell that in
оболочка,
the ancient
это
Egyptian tradition was called chickpeas,
та
the
оболочка,
goddess.
которая
She
в
symbolized the
древнеегипетской
cosmos.
традиции называлась Нут. Она, это богиня Нут, она символизировала космос.
In other
То есть
words,
наша
our eighth
восьмая
shell is
оболочка таким
activated in a
образом
certain way.
активизируется.
We
Мы
begin to
начинаем
interact
более
more deeply
глубоко
with outer space.
взаимодействовать с космическим пространством.
Then
Потом
the ninth
появляется
shell turns on,
девятая
the 10th
оболочка,
shell, and
десятая
so
оболочка
on.
и так далее.
But when
И
we enter
когда мы
these
с вами
spheres,
заходим вот
and
в
then
эти
wake up in the
сферы,
morning,
а
we
потом
do not
утром
remember,
просыпаемся,
because
мы не
consciousness
помним,
goes very
потому
high.
что сознание уходит очень высоко.
And this
И вот эта
inability to remember is associated with a lack
невозможность
of energy
вспомнить
in the human
связана
body.
с недостатком энергии в организме человека. Поэтому
Therefore,
кадуцеи
the
и горы, они
Caduceus and the mountains,
использовались
they were used
кадуцеем
as a
для
tool to
повышения
increase energy, to
энергетичности,
create a kind of
как
energy
бы для
informational
создания
bridge
некого
between the plane where
энергоинформационного
we go into
моста
consciousness
между
and those
тем
doctors who
планом,
deal
куда
with
мы
or have dealt
уходим в
with brain
сознание,
issues,
тем
studying those
врачи,
processes
кто
that occur in the
занимается
brain,
или
especially during
занимался
sleep.
вопросами мозга, изучением тех процессов, которые протекают в мозге, особенно в период сна, там глубокого,
There is
неглубокого,
some very
высоких,
important
очень важных
dream of
фаз
what humanity
сна, о
knows
чем
practically
человечество
nothing, and
практически
the ancients had a
ничего не
clear
знает.
idea of what we do.
А у
Our
древних было
particular
четкое представление,
component
что мы
goes in the higher
единицы, наша
spheres,
определенная
communicates,
составляющая
gets a
уходит
huge amount of
в
very
эти
important
сферы,
information that we then
общается,
don't remember.
получает огромный объем очень важной информации, которую мы потом не помним.
But in
И для
order to
того, чтобы ее
remember it,
помнить,
you need to
нужно вот
create this
этот
bridge.
мостик создать.
And this
И вот этот
bridge was
мостик, он
created with the help
создавался
of
с
the
помощью
caduceus of
кадуцея
Horus.
Гора.
And
И
those
те,
who
кто
work with
связаны,
wands all the
работают
time,
постоянно,
especially
особенно
this
это
type
тип
of caduceus
кадуцея
mountain
Гора
baya,
Бья,
then I
то
think
я
that
думаю,
these
что эти
people have
люди уже
already
обратят
noticed.
внимание, как они так
As I, not only
медитационно
Olenka,
работают.
noticed
Что
that we
действительно
really wake up and
мы
here in the state
просыпаемся,
between
и
sleep
вот
and
в
wakefulness.
состоянии между сном и
Suddenly we begin to
бодрствованием
either hear some kind of voice,
вдруг мы
or we
начинаем
remember that
слышать
we
голос
communicated with
какой-то, либо
someone.
мы помним,
We
что мы с
received
кем-то
very
общались,
important
мы
vital
слышим
information.
очень важную жизненную информацию.
Therefore,
Поэтому
it's great if you go into
здорово,
tone
если
with
вы
an empty
входите
intestine, which
в
saves
тон
a huge
с
amount of
пустым
energy.
кишечником,
You use a caduceus and
что
so on.
сохраняет огромное количество энергии. Вы используете кадуцеи и прочее, прочее. Вот.
And again,
И
we
опять
return
мы
with you to our
возвращаемся с
main
вами
text
к
today.
нашему сегодняшнему основному тексту.
At this
В это
time,
время
blood pressure decreases, the
снижается
immune
кровяное
system seems
давление,
to fall asleep,
иммунная
as it were.
система
And
как
at this
бы
time, the body is
засыпает,
most predisposed to the occurrence of
и
inflammatory
в это
processes,
время
colds
организм
and infections.
наиболее предрасположен к возникновению воспалительных процессов, простуд и инфекций.
It's
Это
not
не
that
то
his
чтобы его
predisposition is pure,
предрасположенность
we
чисто
have
видеть.
already
Это
said several times
мы
today
уже сегодня несколько
that
раз
it is
говорили о
related
том,
to the
что это
function of the
связано с
immune
функцией
system.
иммунной системы.
There is not
Энергии
enough
не
energy,
хватает,
and,
и,
accordingly,
соответственно,
these
начинаются вот
problems
эти
begin.
проблемки.
Accordingly,
Соответственно,
the tone of the
понижается
human body
тонус в организме
decreases,
человека,
the energy intensity decreases,
энергоемкость,
the intensity
падает
and efficiency of
интенсивность
metabolism
и
decreases,
эффективность обмена
the heart
веществ,
rate slows down, that is,
замедляется
everything,
частота
the body
сердечных
goes to
ритмов.
sleep.
То есть все, организм заходит в сон.
Therefore,
Поэтому
I
еще
emphasize
раз
once again
подчеркиваю,
that a
что
late meal
поздний
is
прием
very,
пищи
extremely harmful,
очень
because it disrupts the rest of the digestive
потому
tract
что нарушает
and
процесс
discharges our immune
пищеварительного
system, our
тракта
battery.
и разряжает нашу с вами иммунную систему, нашу батарейку.
The
Заготовление
gastrointestinal
продуктов не
tract does not
справляется
cope with the food that we
с
take at
пищей,
this time, and therefore,
которую мы принимаем в
food
это
is
время,
deposited
а
in the form
следовательно,
of
пища
ballast in the
откладывается в виде
esophagus, and
балласта
this leads to
пищевой,
metabolic
и
disorders,
это
which we
приводит к
then try to
нарушению
restore
обмена
medically, as you
веществ,
like, but not by
которые мы
recreating,
потом
introducing the vibration of
пытаемся
our
снять
aura. That
медикаментозно,
is, in this case,
как
23
угодно,
hours, this is
но
the 11th
не
aura, the
путем
11th shell, with the transition to the
воссоздания, как бы
12th, which
введения
already connects us with the
вибраций
Supreme
своей
Being.
ауры. То есть в данном случае 23 часа– это 11-я аура, 11-я оболочка, вот с переходом на 12-ю, которая уже соединяет нас с высшей сущностью.
In
То
other
есть нам
words,
нужно
we need to
восстановить,
restore,
синхронизировать
synchronize the
вибрации
vibrations
этих
of these
оболочек,
shells, stop doing the wrong
перестать
things,
делать
negative
неправильные
ones,
вещи,
and then we will
негативные,
get a result
и
that will
тогда
exceed
мы с
our every
вами
expectation.
получим результат, который превзойдет наши всяческие ожидания.
And
И
at the
поэтому
same time,
помните, что вот
remember that
23
23
часа–
hours is the
это
milestone
рубеж,
when the body
когда
went to sleep.
организм зашел в сон.
At this
В этот
moment, you
момент
should be in
вы
bed and with
должны лечь в
wands, with
кровати
show-offs,
и
and have pleasant
жезлами,
dreams.
фонтами и видеть приятные сны.
But if
Вот
you
если
observe
все это
all
вы
this,
будете
then,
соблюдать,
believe
то,
me, you will be
поверьте,
happy.
будет вам счастье.
For
На
today, I
сегодня
am
я
finishing this
заканчиваю
very
очень
important
важную
part,
часть, этот
this
очень
very
важный
important
раздел.
section. Here,
Вот.
accordingly,
Собственно,
I am now.
сейчас я
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm ready to ask questions already.
Yeah, that's it. I turned off
всё,
the
я
demo.
отключил демонстрацию.
That's it, I'm ready.
Он готов.
If there
Если
are
есть
any
вопросы, я
questions,
готов
I
на них
am ready
отвечать.
to answer them.
So the first thing that we all conclude with you is that a good meal should take place at 7 in the morning and at 17.
Well, let's say 7-8,
Ну, скажем,
7-8.
7-8,
In a good
7-8,
way, yes, this is a
по-хорошему, да, это
period.
период.
Well, that is
Ну,
twice.
Well,
идеально, конечно,
perfect of
идеально
course,
для организма,
perfect for the
идеально.
body,
Это мы
perfect if
принимаем
we
один
take it
раз в день.
once. In the morning,
Утром,
I say
что
that
мы
we can
можем
eat
съесть всё, что
anything,
угодно,
and the
и
body
организм
completely
полностью
digests and
переваривает и
removes.
выводит.
The second
Второй прием
meal, it is
пищи,
as if the
он
body
как
is
бы
provided
организм
for, but on
предусмотрит,
the one
но
hand,
он, с одной
it
стороны,
is
связан
simply
просто
connected with
с
the period
периодом
of the beginning of the
начала
second
второй
final phase of the
заключительной фазы
withdrawal of negative substances
а,
from the body. So we have a
вывода
feeling of
из
hunger.
организма негативных веществ, поэтому у нас появляется чувство голода.
As if
Как
before
бы
digesting what has
до
not been
переваривания
digested,
того, что не
so the
допереварилось,
endocrine system
поэтому
turns on and
эндокринная
begins to work
система
more
как бы
efficiently.
включается,
The
начинает
pancreas
работать
begins to work
эффективнее,
more efficiently.
поджелудочная
That
начинает
is,
работать
if a person,
эффективнее.
for
То есть
example, is
если человеку
military
какой-то там
or needs something
военный,
there,
там что-то
a
нужно,
person needs some energy
нужна
for some
какая-то
hard
энергия на
work,
какую-то тяжелую
then in
работу,
principle,
то в
yes, it
принципе,
is
да,
justified.
оправданно,
You
вы
can take
можете в этот
food at
момент
this
что-то
moment.
принять,
But from the
но с
point of
точки
view of the
зрения
mechanism,
механизма
we just
мы просто
understand that the
понимаем,
body is
что
arranged in such a
организм
way.
устроен таким
The
образом,
morning meal,
утром
anything is
едим практически все,
digested,
что
the
угодно,
state is prepared for a certain
переваривается,
work during the day, 11
подготавливается
o'clock in the
то есть,
afternoon. More
состояние
precisely,
для
well, 12 o'clock increased
определенной работы в
efficiency.
течение
We are
суток,
active, then a
11
small
часов дня,
spodek.
точнее, ну да, 12 час, повышенная эффективность, мы активны, потом небольшой спадик. Вот.
All that
Все,
we
что
have
мы до
collected up
этого
to this
времени
time is
собрали,
the energy of
энергию,
information.
информация, она
It is being
исчисляется.
implemented. Then the
Затем
last stage of
последний
preparation
этап
and removal of
подготовки и
slags and
вывода
so on is
шлаков и так
18.
далее, это
It's not for
18.
nothing that I said
Евреи
that by
сказал,
the
что
age of
18
18, the Egyptians no
египтяне
longer
уже
took
ничего
anything.
не принимали,
As
как
soon
только
as it got dark,
стемнело,
everything
все,
is
табу,
taboo,
пища
food
не
is not accepted.
принимается. Но
But the
организм
body
продолжает
continues to deduce
выводить
what it
то,
has
что
not yet
не
managed
успел
to deduce.
вывести,
And this is how we
и
solve the most important
таким
tasks
образом
of
мы
slacking
с
off our
вами
body
решаем
to
важнейшие
improve the condition of our
задачи
biophysical
по
antenna.
расшлакованию
This very
своего
jeta, as
организма,
the ancient
по
Egyptians called
улучшению
it.
состояния нашей биофизической антенны, этой самой джеда, как называли его древние египтяне.
Here,
Вот. Ну
and
и,
accordingly,
соответственно,
in our
в нашей
life,
жизни
along with our
результаты
energy, the
энергетичности
quality and
будут
everything
меняться,
else
и
will
качество, и
change.
все остальное.
Then the question is, with food, it is clear. Water. When are we most effective? In what periods?
Water
Воду
can be
можно
taken
принимать
at
в
any
любой момент,
time, no question.
не вопрос.
Water,
Вода,
juices,
соки, они
they do not
никак
negatively
эффективно не
affect the
влияют
human
на
body in
организм.
any way. This can take
Каждый
place at
может
any
принимать
time,
принимать
because you can live in a place where it is very hot, and you will need to drink a lot more water. Or vice versa, somewhere where it is very cold, and you need less water. That's exactly the intake of water is not regulated in any way.
Мгм.
Now, I would like
Мне
to combine
хотелось
the previous
соединить
lecture
предыдущую
and
лекцию
this
и
one.
данную.
In other
То есть мы
words, we
высчитываем
calculate our maximum
наш
rise
максимальный
during the
подъем в
year,
течение
some
года,
kind of 12-day
это
interval.
промежуток 12-дневный
6
с 6
days
дней
before the
до,
peak of
пика
activity,
активности 6
6
дней
days
после.
after. And I want
Хочу
to put it
наложить это
all on
все на
today's
сегодняшнюю
information.
информацию.
These
Вот
6
эти 6
days are
дней
for the maximum
для
productive,
максимального
probably,
продуктивного,
result
наверное,
in life.
результата в жизни.
In what
В какой
period it is
период
better?
лучше, не
I
знаю,
do
там,
not know what
переговоры
kind of
проводить,
negotiations to hold
какие-то вот
there, some here.
Well,
The
самые
most
такие
effective
эффективные
actions
действия
in
в эти
these 6 to 12
12 дней.
days.
I would draw
Я бы
your
обратил
attention to this
твое
fact in the
внимание
first
на вот на
place.
какой факт. В первую очередь.
The fact
То,
that,
что
in general, a
вообще-то
person is conceived
человек
as a form of life
задуман
capable of carrying not only the rudiments
форма
of reason,
жизни,
but also capable of much more.
способная нести не только зачатки разума, но и способная на гораздо большее.
And on the
И
path of its physical and
на
spiritual
пути
evolution, which for
своей
us,
физической
who
и
are at this
духовной
stage of
эволюции,
its development, seems to be
которая
such an
для нас,
endless path,
находящихся
having
на
no
данном
ceiling,
этапе
and
своего
so
развития,
on.
представляется путем таким бесконечным, не имеющим потолка, и
In
тогда
other
это
words,
прям у нас
we have a
потенциал
huge potential.
колоссальный.
And
И
believe
поверьте,
me,
кто
those
пойдет
who
этим
follow this
путем,
path will
получат
receive a lot of joy
очень
and
много
positivity, and
радости
their attitude to
и
their life,
позитива
and to the world
к
around
своей
them will
жизни
change in many ways.
своей и к окружающему миру во многом изменится.
But I want
Но
to
хочу
say that here
сказать,
we are
что
coming to one very important
здесь мы с
aspect.
вами
It is
выходим
critical,
на
which for
один
obvious reason,
очень
people
важный
do not think about.
аспект. Он критический, о котором по понятной причине люди не задумываются.
But in our
Но в
situation,
нашей
when we
ситуации,
have such
когда
an
у нас есть
advanced presenter,
столь продвинутый ведущий,
Excuse me,
Извините.
yes,
да,
who somehow
который
so
как-то
suddenly
так
comes to very
внезапно
important
заходит на очень
topics.
важные темы.
Thank you for that.
Спасибо.
I will say that
Скажу,
yes.
что да, смотри,
Look, during the
в
day of the daily
течение
cycle and during the
круглогодичного
annual
цикла,
cycle, understanding
в
everything we
течение
do, we
годового
gain.
цикла,
We can gain a
понимая
certain
все, что
energy
мы делаем,
potential that will help or may
мы
help us make a
набираем,
certain qualitative
можем набрать
transition.
определенный энергетический потенциал, который поможет или может помочь нам совершить некий качественный переход. Вот
Because
потому
everything in
что
life
все
develops
в
cyclically,
жизни
we have ups and
развивается
downs.
циклически. У нас есть подъемы и спады.
And, as
И,
a
как
rule, this is
правило,
an
и это
amazing feature of our
потрясающая
earthly
особенность
humanoid life form, which for
нашей
some
земной
reason, by a
гуманоидной
non-accidental
жизни,
coincidence,
под
tries to
которой
make some
почему-то
qualitative
по
changes and transitions
не
in its spiritual
случайному
life
стечению
easier,
обстоятельств
like phases of decline
пытается
and less
совершить
activity,
какие-то
as a
качественные
result of
жизненные
which nothing
переходы
worthwhile
в
happens.
своей духовной жизни и прочее, как раз фазы спада и меньшей активности, вследствие чего ничего путного-то и не получается.
You
Понимаешь, да?
understand, right?
Потому
Поэтому
что
и
вот эти...
Yes, what is
Да,
important
здесь
to
важно
remember
что
here.
помнить. Смотри,
Look, rise,
подъем,
fall,
спад,
rise, fall.
подъем, спад.
And this
И
is
вот
where
здесь
you
надо
need to
совершить
make preparations and overlay
подготовку и
when you go
наложение,
out
для
on
того,
the
чтобы вот
ascent
этот
to the upper
подъем
peak
тебе
point these
чтобы
12
вытащить вот
days.
эти 12 дней.
And
А
then, from
затем
that
с этого
moment on,
момента
you
идешь
don't go
не вниз, а
down,
наверх.
but up. In other
То есть у тебя
words, you
получается
get a rise,
подъем
and again a
и
rise
опять
down,
подъем
up, down,
вниз,
but at a
подъем
qualitatively
вниз,
different
но на
level.
качественно ином уровне.
And during this
И вот
ascent,
на этом
as a rule,
подъеме,
during this
как правило,
period,
вот в этот
a
период
person receives
человек
a very
получает
specific subtle
очень
energy.
специфическую
The
тонкую,
evolutionary energy of life,
определенную
let's
энергию
call
жизни,
it that,
назовем ее так,
because so
потому что
far
она у
we do
нас
not
нет
have a
очень
generally
четкого
accepted
названия.
name
Это
for this type
специфическая
of
энергия.
energy.
Но
But the
важно то, что
important
мы
thing
ее
is that we
получаем,
receive
эту
this
энергию,
energy,
и вот
and now it
теперь
is
ей
important not
важно
to lose
не
it,
расти
and we
дальше,
lose it
а мы ее
instantly,
мгновенно
because we do
достигаем,
not even observe
потому
the
что мы
daily
не
rhythm.
соблюдаем даже суточного ритма.
And during
И
the
в
period from
течение
23 to
периода
4, having
23
eaten
до
and drunk
4
everything to the full, this received subtle energy that comes to us. It completely dissolves, and we go back into the cycle in this way, that is, as the Eastern tradition says. We are in the cycle of samsara, we are spinning, and cannot get out of it in any way. And we can't get out, because we don't follow these rules, and we have long forgotten how everything works. Accordingly, let's remember this and our present one, let's call it a lesson. Our conversation today is devoted to this. Remembering that all the greatest achievements and transitions have always been and will always be associated with certain phase states, cycles of a particular person, the Earth and the cosmos. And the very talk about cyclicity is important primarily because we need to think about the existence of this factor. It is recommended to understand it. There is nothing complicated here. And then the most difficult thing is to subordinate your life to these rhythms, these cycles. But if this happens, then everything is great.
Now, summing up all this, just a couple of phrases. So, for those who are about to have a birthday there in a week, and a little further, they now have the opportunity to make this quantum leap.
Yes.
Do I understand correctly?
Yes, there is. Of course, if they have not completely destroyed themselves by this time, but are somehow ready. Because if they have the potential, yes, it can be accomplished. But if by this time a person has already lost everything, then you can try it. Why not? Well, what if it turns out?
It will definitely work. The main thing is to do something.
Yes, but then I will say again, once again, that pay attention to the ancient Egyptian priests and pharaohs. They did not engage in any kind of reasoning. They grabbed technologies obtained in ancient times. We will come back and talk about this great triad of spiritual ascent from the wind and going up there. So all of it is given and used for very specific purposes. And the most interesting thing I'm still cooking for you, wait, we'll be happy together, we'll share. Well, when you master all this, when you learn, you will understand what has been holding you back all the time. And then you will have not just a choice, you will have the opportunity to jump off this needle, jump off and go further. And very effectively change your life and quality of life and health for the better. Here, for the better much. Alice has already intervened in the conversation. She needs everything. It tries to compare what we say and synchronize with what is on the internet.
Well, God grant her success, as we wish Alice.
Yes, well, I think we can handle it ourselves. I think Alice doesn't know anything about this, if she hasn't peeked.
I probably didn't overhear.
Yes, in our books, yes, something like that. Here. That's why we spent a magnificent hour with you there today. A very important time. Thank you for initiating these topics. Here. And I think we will continue this work with you. Now people need to master the material and ask some questions if they have any. Here. And we will move on. Those. Come on.
Then, to remind you how you can ask us questions. First of all, under this video in the comments. This is one time, and this must be done without fail. Be sure to like. Be sure to send this information to everyone who wants to change their lives qualitatively. The second point is, how do we ask questions? Under this video, there will be a link to a Telegram channel where you can write a review, feedback, ask a question. Share your work experience, for example, with Caduceus. There are already lucky ones. Some moments may arise, again requiring attention or intervention. All of this can be done directly, and Valery periodically appears in this chat, so there is an opportunity to communicate freely. Well, then we wish everyone to master. Remember, most importantly, all these positive and negative hours. When something can be done, something cannot be done. And in general, we act according to the cycles of the universe.
Yes, that's right.
Well, thank you all for your attention then, and see you again, as a matter of fact.
That's it, thanks. Everyone.